guys, Jarrod here, and I'm going to talk about the Resident Evil series on the Nintendo GameCube. When it was originally announced that Resident Evil was going to be appearing on the GameCube, I had kind of mixed feelings. Because in one way, I was a big Nintendo fan, and that seemed like, awesome. Nintendo really getting like a big series from Sony. But now, in retrospect, when I look back, I kind of wonder, like, did Nintendo pay them off or something? Because the PS2, I mean, it was destined to be such a huge success because of the fact that it was following up on the PlayStation 1, and the GameCube and the Xbox were released a year later, giving Sony, sort of like a head start there. And the Dreamcast, while it initially started off selling really, really well, it really slowed down by the time the PlayStation came out. Anyways, the PlayStation 2, that is. The point being that, looking back now, probably would have been wiser for Capcom to release it on the PlayStation 2, and by it, I'm talking about Resident Evil 4. But that didn't happen until much, much later, until Resident Evil 4 finally did make its way to the PlayStation 2. But whatever, we're not here to talk about politics. What we're here to talk about is the fact that the entire Resident Evil series was ported over to the Nintendo GameCube with some cleaned up visuals here and there, and that's it. We're going to have a little video just talking about each and every one of the games. Not going to go into the story details or what have you, but just highlights, my own personal highlights, okay? So I'm going to do this in chronological order of how they're actually released, okay? Not, well, actually that doesn't even make any sense. Basically chronological order of what the game is called. So in other words, we're going to start with this one right here, Resident Evil 0. All of these games are in perfect condition, which is to be expected considering it's not that old. This one was unique. This one was really, really unique. I remember this one vividly because you would go back and forth between two different characters. Rebecca is the one I remember. Who's the other guy? I think it was Billy or something like that. It doesn't even say on the back of the box. Super. Anyways, whatever. Whoever the guy is, I don't remember his name now. But anyways, I like the fact there was an interesting gameplay mechanic that you could go back and forth between these two characters, and the visuals were utterly incredible. It was based off of the Resident Evil remake. Don't know if you can really make that out or not, but whatever. This is one of the only Resident Evils actually that hasn't been ported over to many other platforms. I believe there is a Wii version of this over in Japan. I'm not entirely sure if it ever made its way to North America. And all you Resident Evil fans out there, just correct me if I'm wrong with any of the information that I say, especially with the character's name, because I think it was Billy, but whatever. Alright, so Resident Evil 0. This was, like I said, this was a really solid game. I enjoyed this. Some of it was a little bit odd, but I loved the... never forget the one scene where you climb on the roof of the train and everything's moving and it just looked absolutely breathtaking. Resident Evil 0 was just a great way if you're looking to pick up the Resident Evil series on the GameCube. I'd recommend that you play them in chronological order of the way they're titled. So 0, 1, 2, 3, etc., etc. So that's Resident Evil 0. We'll follow it up with the greatest remake in history, Resident Evil, or as we all call it, Resident Evil Remake. This one is so badass that I don't even know where to begin with this. There's so much I could talk. I mean, I could do an entire video on this, which I will one day. The original Resident Evil remains my favorite Resident Evil ever, just because of the time period. When it was released, there was nothing quite like it on the market. But this one took the original formula and just ran with it. I know about the tank controls and all that jazz, but honestly, this one was just mind-blowing. The graphics alone were insane, and I just played this recently, and they hold up just as well today. I swear, at some points you can't even tell that you're playing a title from last generation. It's just absolutely breathtaking, and I miss the atmosphere and the feeling that this game gave off like you would not believe. The new Resident Evil Revelations, at least from the demo that I played, well, at the time of the recording, that's all that's available. It seems to go back and recapture this atmosphere. But if you want to get into the series, this is the one you start with. I don't care what anyone tells you. This is what Resident Evil is all about. Now, when I do the actual reviews for each of these, I'm going to have a Resident Evil 2 comparison to show you against the original PlayStation one. But this remains a really solid port, vastly improved over the original PlayStation version. All the graphics have been really cleaned up. I'm not sure if this version is based off of the Nintendo 64 port or even the Dreamcast port. You guys, you big huge fans out there, you could let me know. But if you're looking for a Resident Evil 2 port and it's all on the same system, hey, why not? You know, pick this up. You can get it for pretty cheap today, I would assume. Also happens to be one of my favorite games ever. And follow that up with Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. Nemesis remains one of my favorite Resident Evils because of the way it's set up. You basically have this guy who's chasing you down when you least expect it. You can't really kill him. All you can do is knock him down and go into the next area. He didn't actually die until the very end of the game. And there's one COE member in particular who's a big baby and hasn't been able to finish this game because he doesn't like being chased. That's right, man. Children. Seriously, this and Dino Crisis 2, at the time of their release, they were really adrenaline pumping games. But why this one is so significant is because of what would follow it in a few years' time. This port, like Resident Evil 2, features more cleaned up graphics, but obviously, you know, these are based on the PlayStation 1 originals. So that's Resident Evil 3. And we have Resident Evil Code Veronica X, which is obviously another cleaned up version over the original Dreamcast one. I'm going to show you guys a review of the Dreamcast one of these days, just because that was the original one, and I'll do that for each of the individual Resident Evils, and like I said, I'll do some comparisons later on. Code Veronica was a big deal when it was originally released for the Dreamcast, because it was seen as a major coup that Sega was able to get the Resident Evil series away from Sony exclusivity, and they were able to do it with a real Resident Evil. Even though it wasn't numbered, this featured Claire, and you know, Wesker was in it, and there was a whole bunch of ties to Umbrella and whatever. The story was a little bit convoluted here, but again, it retained that same feeling of dread and, you know, those lovely tank controls that everyone loves so much. So that's Resident Evil Code Veronica. Then I actually have two of these. I don't know why. This is the Resident Evil 4 preview disc. I don't even recall what this came with, but whatever. I don't even remember. But I have one like this, and I know that there was a Japanese, I think it was a Weekly Famitsu or something like that, there was a Japanese disc that I also have, but I don't know where I put it. This was with the Resident Evil collection, so figured I'd just show you. And this, if I recall correctly, it's just the opening where you're in the town, all the way up to where the guy with the chainsaw comes running out. I forget his name. And once you kill him, it just says Resident Evil 4 and then coming soon or whatever. This was pretty cool. I don't even know. I haven't even checked to see if these are on eBay or anything, but it's a nice little collector's item. And finally, we end off with the one that started everything. When this was originally announced for the GameCube, man, did people go nuts. Resident Evil 4. I'm actually replaying it right now for a video review for you guys. So I'm not going to talk about this one whatsoever, but this changed the game. And, you know, some people, like, adore it. Like, this is their favorite Resident Evil by far. For me, it's not my favorite Resident Evil, only because they drastically changed the feeling of the game. What I do love about it, and what I'm going to mention in the review, is the fact that this is about as adrenaline pumping as you can possibly imagine. They took what basically the core idea behind Nemesis and they just ran with it. So that is basically the entire Resident Evil collection on the Nintendo GameCube. And one of these days I will do a complete video showing how many times I have rebought this collection over the years. It's absolutely insane. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and if you are going to go out and pick these up, why not have them all on the same system? I know one can argue that if you have a PlayStation 3, you could go ahead and do the same thing because of the PlayStation Network. Parts 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica, and 4 are available on there. I think even Part 5 is available on there now. So I guess you could do that too. But there's something about having the Resident Evil series, one of the most mature series ever created, available on a Nintendo platform. It's kind of unique. So thank you very much for watching, everyone. I'll be